Welcome back to Reconfiguring Reality. I'm Jesse,
I'm the Jericho.
I'm Laura.
and today's topic is the history of Halloween.
So, where do we want to start about Halloween?
Its origins.
Its origins. What do you know about the origins of Halloween?
I know the exact origins of Halloween.
Okay,
So technically, Halloween, as we understand it today, is a three-part amalgamation. Originally, it was a Celtic tradition,
do
and
you know the name?
I do, but it's pronounced funny. It's
Okay.
spelled like S-A-H.
Samhain,
Is it
Yeah,
or
Samhain?
IN.
but it's pronounced like Samhain.
Yep.
But yeah, so it was originally like the like pilgrimy definition of it was that it was meant to ward off bad spirits, um, which was not entirely untruthful. However, they looked at bad spirits as anything not Christian, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like actual evil spirits according to the Celtic beliefs. Ghosts. This is getting a little bit off topic, but kind of on topic. So ghosts in the ancient world were unresolved spirits, or they were mischievous spirits, meaning something dark, whether that be demonic, whether it be just from human origin, supernatural, whatever, something was causing some kind of issue. And with Celt beliefs, not everything that was mischievous, even if it was dangerous, was intentionally evil. So Fey folk, for example, were at times mischievous and at times deadly, but it was more about the ignorance of the people dealing with them and less about them inherently just trying to seek out people to murder, because these supernatural entities have no problem going to a civilized area and just wreaking havoc. They just generally didn't. It usually was through the provocation of somebody screwing with their land or their belongings or summoning them or doing something that would rile up the spirits to cause this issue. Well, a big, boisterous, loud celebration could potentially draw those kind of spirits to you. So that's what the costumes and the bonfires were for, amongst other things, you know, burning herbs and rituals and other things they did at the time. But yeah, that's what
Hmm.
So
initially.
it's Samhain is how it's pronounced. But actually it's believed in pagan beliefs that Samhain is when the veil between the land of the living and the dead is weakest, and so they leave offerings of apples, they carve pumpkins to ward off evil spirits but allow friendly spirits to enter your home and stuff like that. It's where you can commune with your ancestors that have passed. But it's also a festival of your thanking the gods for a great harvest if the harvest was, because it's summer ends, fall, your seasons are changing and everything like that, so you're thanking them for a great harvest, a short warm winter, all that fun jazz.
So the second factor is the Romans, which, if you look in history, almost anything that was a thing and became something else is due to the Romans. Because the Romans' philosophy was, rather than just supplicate people and beat them into submission, what they would do is they would say, hey, join our church and you can still practice everything you want to practice. Just incorporate our gods into your religion as well, and everybody's happy. And then slowly over time they would you know breed those other habits out of them. But because they indoctrinated so many other belief systems, that's where the meshing started to happen. And so the when it got to the you know Catholic Church and it came around. That's when the Pope got involved and started, because the Catholic Church in its infancy did the same thing the Romans did, because it was the Roman Catholic Church, right? So like they would do the same thing. They would modify their own religious practices to mimic or incorporate other religious practices in order to indoctrinate people, and then over time would weed those out and just leave it with what they considered a pure faith, and just sort of gotten rid of all the heathenistic stuff that had, essentially and first indoctrinated all the various masses.
Can I wait?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I interject?
Uh huh.
So, this is out so I have a set of books for each pagan holiday that's big for us. So, the Christian influence, when Christianity spread throughout Europe, the church officials went about converting that area heathens by converting their holidays. So when they came up to Samhain, it was Pope Boniface. Am I pronouncing that right? Boniface.
Yeah, I guess.
Attempted to repurpose the ritual of honoring otherworldly spirits and the dead, identifying it as a day of to honor saints and martyrs, and moved the holiday to the May 13th. But when the festival from October 31st to November 1st didn't end, Pope Gregory decided to move the Saints and Martyrs Day back to the same day as the secular Festival of the Dead. In the case of Samhain, rather than negate the Festival of the Dead, the church resorted to declaring November 1st All Saints' Day, also called All Souls' Day, and then later the church added All Souls' Day on November 2nd, possibly because All Saints' Day failed to displace the pagan ritual.
I believe
Um,
it was Pope Gregory the Third.
okay, yeah, and here it just says Pope Gregory. They all have numbers afterwards. See,
Yeah,
um, but
that was the
no,
merging. That was the second merging that I was talking about.
yeah. In Ireland, the days marked a time for family reunions after cow milking season finished. Over time, the night before November 1st, called among many names Halloween, All Hallows Eve. Actually, All Hallows Eve is November 30th, not 31st. Um, that's what they started calling it, so pagans could still practice. So instead of calling it Samhain, it changed into Halloween, and then turned into everybody getting drunk and dressing in slutty costumes and asking for candy.
Well, to be fair, that's essentially what happened during the original. I mean,
Well, but
just because they
but
didn't have a sexy cat doesn't mean they weren't still getting
well,
drunk. And I
well,
mean,
no, but
there was no
it
noble
was a
practices with pagan religions. They all were very, very of the earth.
well,
They
yeah,
even,
you dance naked around circuit
yeah, you talk
on
about
pit.
moon-clad principles. You're
Yeah,
talking about
but I
bathing.
think what she's
Yeah,
saying is now the costumes are just for frolicking and getting candy
yeah,
and not
there's not a
focused on
purpose.
the celebration.
So it's they to a point they got what they wanted by trying to take over the holiday, where it's really not, unless you're pagan, it's not a holiday where people celebrate it for what it is. It's what it's turned into.
Right.
Whereas
Well,
like Christmas, even if someone doesn't celebrate Christmas, they still don't they don't celebrate it just because it's Christmas. As in like Halloween, where even if you're Christian, you're going to send your kids out trick or treating.
well, some do, some don't, but yeah.
Yeah, like I know a couple down the road where their children are not allowed because it's Halloween is satanic and devil worshiping, and their children are not allowed to do that.
Which is still not true.
No, I know, but it's just one of those things where
Well, the
like
thing to remember too is that the modern day Halloween is not a pagan holiday that's been converted. Pagan was a term that meant anything that wasn't Christian.
Right.
mhm.
And Halloween and various things like changing of the seasons, summer solstice, harvest celebrations, fertility rituals. I mean, there's so many things that go into Halloween that aren't related to just the Celts. The Celts are sort of credited with it because it's where the church drew the influence from. But
Mhm.
as time rolled on, they took any religion that was had anything to do around the same period and just would roll all these things into one another. So,
Yeah,
for
because like
example,
the
in Mexico,
Norse.
we have Dia de Muerta, and
Hmm.
it's about the thinning of the veil and visiting the exact same thing the Celts are practicing. The difference is instead of wearing costumes, although people often will paint their faces and do things at a celebration, they have they have the ofrenda, and then they have the pictures of past relatives so that they can invite them to eat. We have celebrations with the dead in our culture where we will go to the gravesite of past loved ones on special days and we will share a meal with them. We'll have a full on picnic and we'll place a meal out for them to join us.
I love that.
Like these practices are considered pagan even by the church and things to this day, but pagan has sort of gotten
But
it's a catch-all term. It's kind of like saying in modern days like calling someone
And
uh,
of
ghetto or frantic
but
or
but
insane.
question with the Day of the Dead.
Hmm.
But I when I lived down in El Paso, I actually got to see like how people celebrated it and everything. But a lot of them came from Catholic churches.
Oh, they do. Oh, yeah.
It's just it it has the same basis, but it's just practiced differently. Where like me, I know a lot of people look at me crazy. Where uh, at least in my religion, apples are an offering you give on Halloween. So your family knows, oh, I'm welcome here. And yes, we still carve pumpkins, and most people roll their eyes at me, but I do it to ward off evil spirits.
Right. So this is kind of what I was talking about. The world over, because we all are the same people when it comes down to it, right? We all came from a progenitor species of human beings and then spread all over the earth as the earth changed and Pangea and all that good stuff. But the thing is, like in the Day of the Dead, right, is not inherently a Mexican holiday. It is, as they understand it to be in modern terms, but it started, we're talking back 3,000 years ago. We're talking about
Hmm.
Mesoamerica, Aztecs, the Nahue, you know, these are practices that they believed and are just sort of a modern twist on them. But the concepts of celebrating with the dead, spirits lingering, things like that have been around since the birth of mankind.
Yeah, every religion kind of has
Yeah, even
a
Christian
different
faith talk
form.
about spirits and ghosts and people refusing to be departed, angels, devils, all this sort of thing. So it's just a different flavor text on the same thing, is essentially what I'm getting at. So modern day Halloween, although it has large influences from pagan rituals, I just want to make it clear to people that pagan is not a religion. Pagan is just a blanket term Christians use to describe anybody alternative. Nowadays, a modern recapturing of the term, people identify themselves as pagan. However,
Hmm.
pagan has never been a thing. There wasn't like a pagan church or like a pagan
No,
theodicy
pagan
of any
and
sort.
pagan branches, people who worship Norse gods like
Oh
me.
yeah, there's
But it's also
druids.
Greeks, there's Druids, there's the Celtics, there's people who still worship the Roman pantheon. It's just a nice little blanket term because I'm sorry, I do not want to have to sit there and say, "Oh, I'm Norse," and then have to explain it because people are like, "Oh, you're Norse. We already knew you were fucking you your genealogy came from Scandinavia and stuff like that."
Well, this I can understand the frustration, but I will tell you this is getting a little bit off topic, but I think in the same way that the modern culture wants, we like putting labels on things, right? So just in like today in modern culture, just simply stating someone is gay is no longer sufficient, given all the various things that have gone on with gender identity and all that kind of stuff. I think religion should um, embrace a similar faction. I think people shouldn't be afraid to say, I believe in the Norse pantheon or I believe whatever, because it sounds better to the average person. It may sound hokey or it may sound goofy, but it's hits the ears better given the massive Christian influence than to say I'm pagan. When someone says
Well,
I'm pagan, they instantly start thinking you have your body covered in upside down pinnacles and you're doing
yeah.
bloodlettings and crazy, right? Like that's the stigma behind it. And
Well,
that
it's
may
just
also be a Western thing, but
I guess it's hard for me because like a lot of my friends are like, "Oh, well, I'm Christian." okay, well, are you Lutheran? Are you Catholic? Are you Southern Baptist?
What denomination are you?
Yeah, and that's kind of like why most pagans just say, "Oh, I'm or most people who aren't Christian that aren't Muslim or Jewish or anything like that say it is because it's like, well, Christians do it all the time.
It's
But
true.
see, I've noticed, but like with you guys, if I ask you, well, what religious beliefs do you believe in? You don't say Christian. You tell me exactly what it is, and I know right off the top of my head, okay, I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And
think
then,
the catch-all, like you said about Christians, has to do with the fact that although there are some kind of fringe outlier churches, on the whole, we're all on the same page. Like
mhm,
we generally believe in most of the same things. There are a few hardcore, like, no, I don't believe this or this departs that way. But you can just say like 75% of our book is the same as 75% of your book, kind of thing, right? So I
yeah,
think that's why that blanket term is a little bit more acceptable
The,
because
the only time I answered that question by saying I'm a Christian is when I went to a non denominational church.
okay,
Otherwise,
yeah,
I'd be like, well, I'm Lutheran or I'm Methodist or
yeah. Like I
I
grew
belong to
up,
the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter day Saints.
yeah, like I grew up Catholic, but we always said we were Christian
Mm-hmm.
because my dad was Lutheran, my mom was Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird having those two with those two belief systems get married.
My mom was Lutheran. My dad was raised in a Catholic church.
Yeah, I was raised in a Catholic church and look what happened to me.
Yeah, I was raised in a Lutheran church because typically the children follow the mom's line of religion.
Oh, that's why my dad didn't fight it then.
Yep.
Okay. But no,
But
I
like
was also raised Catholic, but I
but
won't.
Halloween, I try not to like both me and the ex agree. Our children, we are not pushing our religions on them because he is Southern Baptist and I'm Norse. So, like, if Liam has a question about like something I'm reading, I'll explain it to him, and then that's about it. Because the ex doesn't really follow a religion. He doesn't go to church. He doesn't read the Bible or anything like that. But
right.
it's just he was like, well, I don't believe what you believe. You don't believe what I believe. So what do we teach the kids? I was like, let them learn on their own. Let them make that choice for themselves when they can. But I don't celebrate Christmas like I should. We still do the tree, we still do everything for my kids, but then I take my time to celebrate Yule my way. But it's just like Halloween. I still let my kids go trick or treating and everything like that. I don't stop them from doing the westernized Halloween just because it falls on a specific holiday for myself.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the traditions that we find in a westernized Halloween.
For adults or children.
We're going to do a little bit of everything.
Okay.
We're going to start with carving jack o' lanterns. Do
Hmm.
you know where that originated,
The Celts did it.
Jericho?
Yeah, it's Celts.
Actually originated in Ireland. I don't know if it was a Celt or what, but I
Gaelic Celts. It's kind of like Lutheran and
okay.
Christian. There's very they believe the same thing, just little tweaks here and there.
Do you know what the origin story is of the jack o'
I was always taught it was to ward away evil spirits on all Halloween. So you would sit there, carve it, put a candle in, and it would sit there and alert the spirits they're not allowed, they're not welcome
lantern? Okay.
in the home.
Jericho, do you know anything about the origin of jack o' lanterns?
Beyond the ancient practices, no.
Okay, so like I said, I found that it originated in Ireland, and it actually originated with carving turnips. Okay, allegedly, based on the legend, it was uh, there was a man named Stingy Jack who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven did not want his soul either, so he was forced to wander Earth as a ghost for eternity. The devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal and a carved out turnip to light his way, and that is where jack o' lanterns originated.
That's kind of cool.
So I think just to clarify for people who are listening, so the carving of pumpkins, the origin of carving pumpkins in general, was done through like ancient Celtic and Gaelic peoples. Specifically, the jack o' lantern with the face and stuff is what she is referencing in that origin.
Well, I
Because
kept
there's two.
asking about jack o' lantern and not pumpkins, so
Well, people think of the tradition as not making a jack o' lantern. Like if you ask them what a jack o' lantern is, people understand, but they think of it as carving pumpkin, the act of carving pumpkins that people do, and ultimately end up carving a jack o' lantern or some variation thereof.
Well,
The
that makes sense
practice.
why they call it a jack-o'-lantern now.
yeah,
Okay.
because it was
Yeah.
Jack's
The more
lantern.
you know.
Yeah, so that's
That's
that.
actually really cool.
Who knew I would find something that you didn't know about Halloween? And it was the first one. Damn.
Well, this is a good point that to reference what we are talking about is that modern Halloween is an amalgamation of various practices from all over the world. And ideas from them, from gift giving to celebratory things to parties to intoxication, it all comes from various sources. And that was that third step of Halloween I'm talking about is the profit. All holidays are
Mm-hmm.
subjected to marketing. If they can make money on it, they're going to, right? Like if you ask anyone, for example, in for Japan, their traditional Christmas dinner is KFC.
Oh, yes.
And like
Have you
KFC is not a very
seen their
old thing.
KFC dinners, though, for Christmas?
Oh yeah, they even have a 5-star KFC restaurant in Japan. It's ridiculous.
Uh-huh. I'm
But
jealous.
my point is that somebody got the bright idea of, well, Japanese loves Western culture at this point. It's a hot selling item back in the day, and they go, how could we do this? And so KFC went, we're going to become the face of it, to the point now that you see like the Colonel dressed up as Santa Claus more than you see actual Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Like that's just marketing, right? So that's why modern Halloween is not necessarily a ritual in the traditional sense any longer. It's frivolity and just an excuse to dress in costumes and have a good time.
What about black cats being used as a symbol of Halloween?
Oh, black cat's just a negative symbol, even though it's really not. I'm not gonna get on that subject.
You're not going to get on that subject. Well, I'm bringing that subject up.
So,
I
well,
don't
what?
I don't know the origins of why a black cat is representative of Halloween, but I know the negative stigma on it.
Okay.
Well, you have ancient Egypt to thank for that.
I thought
So, um, again, cultures colliding and mixing, right?
uh-huh.
So, with ancient Egypt, you're talking about like Bastet, right?
Yeah.
And that she was represented as a female with a black head of a cat, right?
Yeah,
And
her head was a cat, she had tails, and her lower legs were she had paws and stuff.
right now, as far as Bastet goes, do you know the things that she was known for?
I do not. I did not really look into the Egyptian pantheon.
Sure. So she was, as many gods and goddesses are in various pantheons, she didn't just have one hat, right?
Hmm.
So she was known as a god of protection, of cats, duh, pregnancy, fertility, music, warfare, and ointments. So though
Okay.
she was seen as merciful and a protective figure, she was also known to have an extreme temper when she was riled. But more specifically, she protected homes from evil spirits and disease. That was her big thing. So she got associated with as a protection symbol by ancient cultures originally. But if you had warring factions, one protector becomes another person's bane.
Hmm.
So that leads into the other half of the superstition of black cats being evil or whatnot, because many religions saw cats in general as a bridge between the living and the dead,
Hmm.
mainly because they would hang around places like, graveyards, because where you're going to find mice and rats around
Graveyards.
carrion.
Yeah.
So they became associated with spirits and death, and black was, you know, uh,
The
it's an
devil.
easy color to
The
paint as
color
evil.
of the devil.
Well, yeah, like even though the devil wasn't black, which is even funnier, but but that just goes to show you how things get messed up. But also there was I'm not as familiar with the second part of it, but there was something about the Greek pantheon. Again, Greeks and Romans coming in to muck stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
But there was like, uh, I think it's Hecate or Hecate something or
Hecate.
yeah, the goddess of magic and sorcery.
Mm-hmm.
Also moon, witchcraft, etc. She was described as having a cat as both a pet and a familiar. So European folklore, that particular goddess, witchcraft, evil,
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
Well, like in Norse mythology, Freya, her chariot was pulled by extremely large black cats. Like on my necklace with my Mjolnir, I have a little statue of a cat for Freya. But everybody assumes like it's a big black cat. Oh, it's negative. Freya was the goddess of love and fertility and all this other kind of stuff. And kind of like Bastet, where if you piss her off, you done pissed off the wrong goddess. So
Yep.
it's like cats kind of, but if you think about it in a way, like look at cats compared to dogs. You can piss a cat off and it's gonna fight back. But yet you like, let's say you piss a dog off, not necessarily a dog just wants love and affection. So I can kind of see why they went towards more of like using a cat as a negative symbol, because it's like a yin and a yang. You can have a sweet cat one day and then it's just temperamental the next and it's gonna like claw your eyes out.
They're like
Well,
Sour
yeah, there's a lot
Patch
of things.
Kids.
Exactly. They're sweet until they're
There's a
sour.
lots of things associated with cats as to where superstitions grow from. Their connection to witches was really the big thing, right? Doesn't matter if it's an ancient witch or a modern witch, the term witch became synonymous with the devil. Therefore, any witch throughout history was then painted as evil, and anything they were associated with, i.e., familiars, cats, blah, 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 just got lumped in. And then from like a more, I don't want to say realistic, but a more practical mode of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, dogs, generally speaking, were not, unless they carried like diseases through um, fleas or something. Besides things like rabies, they really didn't carry necessarily a ton of disease. Whereas cats, from a small scratch, could kill you
Mm-hmm.
if they were carrying the right thing, right? So the idea of cats, graveyards, the touch of death, it um, cats are also drawn to certain things from people, certain like breathing patterns or heat or various things. Cats have been known to be attracted to the way a person is treated
But
and living before they die. So the superstition is they know when people are going to die and all this sort of stuff. When cats really aren't, have no clue when someone's going to die. They're just going to sit on their chest or whatever for one reason or another.
yeah.
And
But
so that
I
superstition leads all into the same thing.
but my question is why is it just like just black cats? Like wouldn't it just be any type of cat then?
I think they focus on the black cat because the
Because of the
stereotype.
stigma of the color black.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
I,
and it's the scariest cat. Like
but
if you
no,
think
it's
about it,
not.
well, think about it. Most cats are bright and colorful, and their hairs become long hairs or short hairs or whatnot. But black cats, because again, what's the scariest thing in the ancient world? The dark, because you literally can't see things coming. It's not like modern days where you have the lights of the city that give you a soft glow at all times, and there's all these various light sources. You were the when black of night back then meant black of night. You didn't see
Yeah.
jack and all. So all of a sudden, if you were holding a candle, which if you've ever hold a light source like that in the wilderness, you literally illuminate yourself and that's it. You ain't seen jack. And so imagine now you're one of these people with a lantern or a light, and then all of a sudden you see a pair of like slitted eyes following you, seeming to float between the trees because cats are nimble and graceful and don't make a lot of noise, and you can't see the cat because it's black. Until it
Yeah.
shows itself, it seems like the shadow is literally forming into a creature, right? As opposed to a bright orange tabby cat that's just chilling out. You
Oh
know
yeah.
what I mean? So it's not hard to understand why they would jump to, I mean, any dark cat at that point would be under suspicion, but specifically black cats, if you look at the world around us, in nature, anything that's black is usually the worst thing you can come across. The black mamba, the
No,
black
I know.
widow,
It's just
you know.
it sucks because like especially around Halloween time, it you'll start to see like especially like even on Craigslist, like people trying to get rid of like pure black kittens because of that type of stigma.
Sure.
And it's just sad.
I agree.
Well, again, I think it's more of a it's a cultural thing, right? We in the West and even in Europe tend to think of ourselves as bigger than we are. Like even in America, we're one of the largest countries, right? In terms of like our growth and our reach and our mingling of other cultures. But despite this, we assume the world has our prejudices when they don't, right? Like the swastika was co-opted by Nazis, right? But
Yeah.
on the eastern side of the world, it's a religious symbol, one for peace and one for healing, and various
Well,
other uses.
it's not even. I believe the some Native American cultures used it also.
Oh yeah, it's an ancient symbol. But that's my point, right? Like our stigmas are not the world's stigmas. So there's plenty of places in the world where black cats are no different than any other cat. It's
Mm.
just a cat.
But over here, well, it's just like there's certain Norse symbols that I have on necklaces or shirts or stuff like that, and I to me they mean something, but I didn't know that they're totally like used by Nazis, like today's Nazis, as a negative stigmas. So all of a sudden I'm getting pointed out by Sean being like, you can't wear that shirt outside. Why? People are gonna think you're a Nazi. What? Why? This is what it means. He's like, I know that, you know that, but other people don't know that. It's just people sit there and kind of take bits and pieces from every type of culture and just turn it into what they want it to mean sometimes.
All right, Lorelai, what's next on your list?
Next on the list, let's talk about the colors black and orange.
I got nothing
Ooh,
for
that's a
you
good
there.
one.
So,
It
I
the
I'm gonna have
colors
to let you
trace
take this
back to
one.
Samhain.
well, it's a fire festival, so red, orange, all that fun jazz.
I would assume, like a wild guess, mind you, but I would assume it's because of the changing of the season, right? So you're talking about like colors of death and rebirth, right? So like as the summer's waning, you're looking at the bright oranges, yellows, browns, blacks, of various things dying and waiting to be renewed after winter.
That's exactly what it is. Black is symbolic, symbolic for death, where orange is symbolic for the autumn harvest season. And of course, we talked about lighting candles and bonfires and what that
Mm-hmm.
light symbolizes. So I won't bring that upon us again.
Burning Man.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. What about trick or treating?
I never. For me, I try and not to look into like why it changed the way it did because of the fact that it just kind of irritates me.
Okay.
So I do not know like why or
We're talking
how
about
trick or treating.
origins.
I know.
So
I only care about my origin lore. No,
there's
I'm joking.
three theories on the origin of trick or treating. So nobody can put their finger on what the true origin is. But there are three different theories. Jericho, do you know any of them?
So I know of two. I
Okay.
don't know if those are the three you're referring to, but I've heard two explanations.
Okay.
The first was that it was basically the PG version of an ancient ritual of sacrifice. It was you would give things in order to like warding off evil spirits. You would pay recompense or worship to whatever spirit or group of spirits, whether they be divine or you know demonic, in order to placate them so as to not incur their wrath. Hence, the trick part would be like if you didn't appease them, then they would befall your house with misfortune or curses or bodily harm or some other form of retribution for not essentially paying off these ghostly extortionists. Um, the second one is kind of the same thing, but it was linked to a story of witches, where witches, um, would are notorious for kidnapping people and eating them or sacrificing them or whatever. So they would
Uh-huh.
essentially go to people's houses and be like, "Hey, give us some stuff because if you don't, we're gonna jack you up." So they basically would run a racket on people, and so you either would appease them with your offering or they would curse you using their witch magic. Hence the trick, right? You would get some nasty thing falling upon you. Very similar thing, but it linked it to witches and paganism specifically, and not supernatural and deities.
Mm-hmm.
It would surprise you, probably, to learn that my three theories are not as sinister as that. The first theory I have for you is from Sawin, and it's that people for Samhain would leave food out to appease the spirits traveling the earth at night. Over time, people began to dress as these unearthly beings in exchange for similar offerings of food and drink. That's it.
Mm.
Yeah, nothing sinister there, right? The other one I have is during the Middle Ages, children and poor adults would collect food and money from local homes in return for prayers for the dead. And then that turned into the Scottish practice of guising, where guisers would they drop the prayers in favor of non-religious practices, which include songs, jokes, and other tricks. So they would get rewards for like dressing up and doing tricks and stuff like that. The third theory is that modern American trick or treating stems from. I'm gonna butcher this. It's a German word. It's Balsnickling,
Mm-hmm.
which that was in a German American tradition where children would dress up in costume and then call on their neighbors to see if the adults could guess their identities.
Mm-hmm.
For Halloween, they did that, and the ones who were like, if they couldn't be identified, they won treats, like food treats. So those are the three theories of where trick or treating originated that I found. I didn't find any of those negative though.
No. But do you know why they say trick or treat?
No.
Well, so it originated in the early 20th century, and it was like a way to protect homes from mischievous pranksters. And property owners would offer candy to children to prevent them from playing pranks, such as reassembling farm equipment on rooftops.
Oh, oh my goodness.
So it was a way of yeah. So it's like, hey, stop fucking with my shit, kid. Here's some candy.
Oh, that makes sense. Oh wait. I read something about a Halloween parade. I'll have to find that again. Yeah. So I do have here that pranking was also big.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Samhain also included some good-natured mischief. And apparently, the Irish and Scottish immigrants brought that mischief with them. I read an article somewhere about a police officer, I believe, started an annual Halloween celebration to stop pranks. To keep. Oh, it's in Minnesota.
Oh God. Okay.
Anoka? Anoka?
Anoka. Oh my God, that's right down the road from where I live.
Anoka, Minnesota is believed to be the first city in the United States to have an official Halloween celebration, which began in 1920. The celebration was how to keep children away from pranks. And I think the reason they did that was because they kept having, like, the death toll kept growing.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to do
Well,
something to distract the kids from pulling dangerous pranks.
so now they also did it, not just that there's a new kind of like holiday that, or not holiday, but tradition they do like a pub crawl on Halloween because they were having so many issues in Anoka with people going downtown drinking and then having a whole bunch of casualties because you're drinking and driving.
Right.
So what they do is they actually shut the streets down so people can go from one pub to another to another to another, and everybody's dressed up. That it's a drunk zombie pub crawl is what they call it. But
Well, yeah, they started it on in 1920.
yeah, I
And
haven't done the
an,
the pub crawl, but I might one day.
um apparently Anoka is considered the Halloween capital of the world.
Where
Yeah.
is?
Anoka, Minnesota.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would not think it was there.
Anoka, Minnesota is believed to be the first city in the United States to put on a Halloween celebration to divert its youngsters from Halloween pranks. When Anokans awoke to find their cows roaming Main Street, windows soaked, and outhouses tipped over, they decided something had to be done. But what?
We're gonna throw a party.
A costume parade and block parties seemed like the perfect trick. Halloween became a wonderful distraction for our town for generations to come, and we wouldn't have it any other way. The crisp of the season, the creativity of the shops, the schools, the costumes, the laughter, the food, the fun, and the parties. There are so many reasons to love the month of October, and baby, we count those blessings every day around here. That's from the Anoka Halloween Capital of the World website. So yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's it for pranks, right? Did you guys ever do any Halloween pranks growing up? Did you TP
Oh
anybody's
Oh
yeah.
house?
yeah. I
Who doesn't
yeah.
participate in some low level vagrancy,
I
right?
didn't. But my house was egged once, so
Oh, I egged, I TP'd, I put sugar in
gas tanks.
gas tanks. I was a fucking hooligan.
Oh goodness, who would have thought? Hmm.
No, of course. Who would have thought? Me out of
Someone needed more
everybody.
hugs.
Actually, yes, I did.
What did you say, Jericho?
I said,
Someone needed more hugs.
Oh,
yep.
what do we know about bats?
They're
They're cute and
marsupials.
cuddly, and I want one.
Okay, okay. I did not hear what Jericho said because of Jess's excitement.
Well, I said bats are marsupials.
Oh, okay. So we don't know anything about it.
No, not really.
Okay. Bats were likely present at the earliest Pronto Halloween celebrations, not just symbolically, but literally. Of course, we know that bonfires were lit as part of the celebration, which attracted insects, which in turn attracted bats. Soon, spotting bats became connected with the festival. Medieval folklore expanded upon the eeriness of bats with a number of superstitions built around the belief that bats are harbingers of death.
Well,
Interesting.
also bats are they're set to do their migration shortly before Halloween time. So oftentimes that's when they're swarming as opposed to being solitary hunters
Mm-hmm.
because they're gathering together to travel in a group. So that's why they would also appear in large numbers.
Huh. Would not have thought.
Yeah, because normally bats you might see a couple, even if there's a bugs or a normal hunting season for them. But when they're near migration time, they're just like birds. They gather together,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like well you'll see like there's these videos you can see online where they'll be like oh that's a crazy looking tree and then they zoom in on it and it's just a dead tree with branches but it's just covered in bats.
All right, we're gonna move on to the food portion of this topic.
I mean, is there modern day Halloween food other than candy?
There is, but
There is,
let's
yeah.
talk about some that aren't still in practice, or as far as I know, aren't still in practice. There's a tale that in Scotland, fortune tellers recommended that eligible young women named a hazelnut for each of her suitors, and then they were to toss the nuts into the fireplace. The one singular nut, that burned to ashes rather than popping or exploding, as the story goes, represents the girl's future husband. Then it says in some versions of this legend, the opposite was true. The nut that burned away symbolized a love that was not last. Oh, that a love that would not last. But I don't know anybody that does that anymore. Do you?
I mean,
Mm-mm.
was that an actual Halloween tradition or just something people kind of
Well,
melded?
so I can give you guys kind of like an idea. So that I like for me, I make specific foods on Halloween,
Hmm.
but they're just for me because no one likes my cooking in my goddamn house. But I've heard of that. I don't do that, but I know a couple people who still do just because their parents did it and their grandparents did it, and it was just a handed down family tradition. But I don't know many people who do that still.
Okay.
But so
What
I
about?
make griddle.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, yep. So they're called griddle cakes. It's an Irish tradition for Samhain,
Okay.
and it's pretty much like a pancake, but instead it's flour, baking soda, milk, or yogurt. I use yogurt because I like it better. But it's like a pancake pretty much, and you just serve it like a pancake. But then there is I can never pronounce it, but it's an Irish stew that I make.
Okay.
And it's just cabbage, butter, milk, a whole bunch of potatoes, and chives.
Oh,
But it's so good.
so creamy potato soup. Stew.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds good.
I mean, I thought Halloween food, like air quotations, right, has just been seasonal food, right? Like pumpkin bread, pumpkin pie, apples, apple bread, caramel apples,
Okay, we're gonna
anything
talk about apples in a minute. Don't.
that's just harvest related, right?
Yeah. A lot of reasons why like apples and pumpkins are a big dish in September, October is because that's harvesting season
Yeah.
for that specific thing. So of course you're going to have dishes associated with Halloween that necessarily has nothing to do with Halloween. It's just that's when it happens to be harvested. And you don't want it because way back when they didn't have freezers, they didn't have ways really to can and preserve food, so it's you
Eat it
cook
now
what you
or it'll
have. Mhm.
ferment.
Yeah, so that's why like even
Like they
today,
had cold houses and basements. Calm down.
not 4, 5, 6,000 years ago.
I mean, yeah, even back then, they figured out cold caves and they figured out
Well, yeah,
dig a
that
hole deep enough and
what
it's cold.
didn't don't the Eskimos don't they like even now? I don't know. Is that a non-politically correct term to
Have
say? I
no
don't
clue.
know. If I offended anyone, I am sorry and please correct me in the comments. Inuit, maybe that's the word I'm looking for.
Well, no,
They
it's Inuit, by the way, is what you're looking for Eskimo.
okay. So I know some people still have like their modern fridges and stuff, but when it comes to certain things, they still have that big large hole in the ground that they preserve their whale meat and stuff
Huh.
with. And I think it's just kind of out of tradition and out of like respect of the culture to a point too.
Interesting.
But what about apples?
Oh, hold on, I'm not there yet.
Oh, sorry.
There's another tale that said that if a young woman ate a sugar concoction made out of walnuts, hazelnuts, and nutmeg before bed on Halloween night, she would dream about her future husband.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you need to make that concoction, Jess.
Oh my god!
If you do, let me know who you dream about.
Oh god. Johnny Depp! How about that? Give me that one.
I want to say
Now,
something totally
right
off
now,
topic.
I am happy working on myself. Thank you very
Good.
much.
So we know the act of going door to door for handouts has been a part of Halloween for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Do we know how long candy has been the almost main thing that was given out on Halloween?
I mean, transitioning to the main thing, I gotta say that's gotta be fairly new, right? That it substitutes any other sort of Halloween gift.
Fairly
I'm
new,
gonna
sure.
I'm gonna say 1800s.
Okay, Jess, do you have a guess?
I'd say closer to like end of 1800s.
Okay, so until the mid 20th century, the treats that the children received were not necessarily candy. They received things like nuts, fruits, coins, and toys. Trick or treating rose in popularity in the 1950s, which inspired candy companies to market small, individually wrapped candies. Those small, individually wrapped candies became the treat of choice in the 1970s when parents started fearing anything that was unwrapped. So, candy as a sole treat for trick or treaters didn't happen until 1970s.
See, it makes sense,
Okay.
but I know that the old traditions carried well into the 21st century. Like even in my age, they would have like meetings at our schools and be like, be careful of carameled apples or be careful of things that whatever because there could be razor blades in them and all
They
that
still
kind
have
of
that
stuff.
to this day, and there are still people that pass out things like apples and oranges and money, but candy is the main go-to for trick-or-treaters.
Well, of course, because it's a money grab.
Well, yeah, I mean everything's gets modernized and you got to pay to play. Coca-Cola stole Christmas, right? Like, I mean,
Oh god, yeah.
even though Pepsi's better, Coca-Cola sucks. Come at me.
We have
Uh,
one more Halloween food to talk about before we move on to apples. And
okay.
I'm disappointed in both of you because it is my favorite Halloween thing.
Mm-hmm.
Pumpkin?
It is that of the candy corn.
Candy
Wait, why are you disappointed in me?
corn is disgusting,
I
Laura!
love candy corn.
No, it's disgusting.
You like sugar. I keep telling you, you don't have a taste for actual taste. You just, if it's sweet, you like it.
Yeah, maybe, but candy corn is good. I like candy corn. I like painting my nails to look like little candy corns at Halloween because I like candy corn.
Oh, I don't know if we can be friends anymore, Laura.
That we can because at least you have someone to give your candy corn to now that will appreciate
That is
it.
true. That is true. I'll just buy you bags of candy corn for Halloween and say, "Here you go."
So a
Look, I
candy
will.
maker at a candy company in Philadelphia is sometimes credited with inventing the candy corns in the 1880s. But candy corn did not become a widespread sensation until the Golitz Company brought the candy to the masses in 1898. Candy
Okay.
corn was originally called chicken feed, and it's sold in boxes with the slogan "Something worth growing for."
Ugh.
What date was this?
1898.
That makes sense.
Initially, it was just an autumn type candy because the corn's association with harvest time, but candy corn later became Halloween specific when trick or treating grew in popularity in the United States during the 1950s.
So, did you know that in the 1880s, that the reason candies were the way they were and what led to candy corn and why it was corn and other various things is because they used to market to farmers for treats. Just like today where they give out like fruit baskets or chocolates or whatever to like clients and things. Back
Mm-hmm.
then when they were courting farmers, they would give them agricultural themed treats.
Huh.
So it could be
Oh.
chestnuts or pumpkins or turnips or anything. And again, candy corn was corn. They just didn't necessarily make it look like a corn of cob, but they did do that on occasion. That's why the origin of candy corn is hard to pin down, is because everybody and their mother was taking what they used to call mellow cream and molding it into various shapes and giving it out. Because
Huh.
back in the day, remember, established brands were still relatively rare.
Right.
Like, so people would just make things. And there were so many people just making things that whoever decided to make candy corn, could have been just, Velma from down the street. It caught on and got shared quickly over the course of, 2,000 people. So
Now we can talk about apples. And we know that apples is part of a tradition that you do, Jess, that you leave the apple out.
Mm-hmm.
What's that for again?
So for me, it's to allow ancestors to know they're welcome in the home,
Gotcha. Okay.
unless they
and
were a doctor, in which case it would bar them from the house.
but no, and it's also apples represent different things for different gods and stuff like that. Yeah.
So do you know anything about candy apples?
I don't. All
Yeah,
I
they have
know is
candy on them.
I love candied apples, not caramel apples, candied apples.
Jericho, what did you say?
I said they have candy on them.
So the coating, the candy syrup coating,
Mm-hmm.
was actually a means of preservation for the apple.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like a wax coating, I could see it.
Oh, that's cool.
So during the Roman festival of Pomona, the goddess was often represented by and associated with apples. Her name derives from the Latin word for apple, which is primum. So that fruit was the heart of the celebrations. But it says that candy apples were invented accidentally in 1908 by a candy maker in New York, New Jersey. Okay, I don't know why that story of the Roman festival is important. I'm sorry, but the candy apples were invited. The candy apples were invented accidentally in 1908 by William W. Kolb. He was actually experimenting with red cinnamon candy to sell the apples at Christmas time, and he dipped the apples on sticks into the red glaze and put them on the shop in the shop window as just like a showcase. Like, hey, look how beautiful these are. But instead, he ended up selling the candied apples, to his customers because they looked good enough to eat. So
Ooh.
that's how he
I-
accidentally
Well, I
invented
think that's
these.
like the origin of cinnamon candy apples, right?
I mean, yeah, the ones with the red coating. I don't know why it got. I guess he made them sweeter.
Well,
Well,
the thing is,
well,
toffee apples were invented in England, and they were being created and sold as early as the 1890s. So it was a derivative of that. I think it's the same thing as with candy corn. I think people were just, what could we dip things into to make a thing a thing?
Yeah,
And
maybe.
he was like, hey, people actually want to eat these things without ever trying it, right? It's the same guy like the guy who invented potato chips, right? Like he accidentally sliced potatoes too thin and then just decided, well, let's fry them up real quick because it's going to make a real good potato meal. And it just turned out to be a big hit.
What were you gonna?
well,
Yep. Good.
because now I'm confused. Because I the very first time I ever had a candy apple was down in New Orleans when I was pregnant,
Was it
and
sweet or cinnamony?
it was sweet, but it was red.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it just kind of depends on which one, because we went into this shop and they had a candied apple and I never knew what that. I was like, why would you want to try, like, I've had caramel apples or like chocolate dipped apples, stuff like that, but I was like, why would anyone want to sit there and try and break through a candy shell to get into an apple? But it was the like most amazing thing I ever had, but it wasn't cinnamon. It was sweet.
Huh.
It literally was like a sugar glaze over the top of it.
Yeah,
It's
with
like
red, it's your red
they
caramel.
boiled, yeah,
Caramel.
like they boiled the sugar and then just dipped it in. Kind of like what they do what is it called in Korea, where like they take the strawberries on the skewers, dip it in the sugar, let it harden and then you eat it. It's kind of like that. I just don't know why it's red.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I've never had a candied apple. I've never had a carameled apple. I've never had any kind of apple on a stick.
Because she hates apples.
I do not like apples.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I don't like the taste.
If it makes
I
you feel
don't like
better,
the
they also
smell.
use Granny Smith apples in most of these too. A lot of people think they use red apples because of the red coating, but they actually use the Granny Smith to counteract
Yeah,
the
the little.
super sweetness.
Mhm.
From what I understand, they're like
That's what
sour.
mine always were.
Yeah, no. So, Jess, I'll give you all my apples for all of your candy corn.
Deal.
Deal. Okay,
See,
well,
I love apples. I love red delicious apples. I love gala apples. I love Honeycrisp apples. I love Granny Smith apples. I like apples.
That's
um,
because you're a sinner.
I can cook with them, but I won't eat them.
You know what? I understand I'm a sinner in your eyes.
Look, it's your people's fault that my people got in trouble. Okay.
My people?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh my
If you'd
god.
have left the apple
Whoa.
on the tree, we wouldn't have had this problem. But you got to be like,
Oh,
yo,
you mean
bro,
women?
take a
Oh,
bite.
okay. I'm like, my people, we doing this now. You know what? You know what? There is scientific proof that my religion is older than yours.
Scientific proof. I,
Okay.
I
Hard
don't know.
dating. Anyways, we're not getting in this
I
debate,
figured
Jericho.
out I figured out why the story of the Roman goddess is important. So,
Oh, okay.
um so the Roman goddess was named what the fuck was her name again? Pomona,
Mm-hmm.
which is apple, like
Oh,
based off the apple Latin word for apple. So there
apple
are.
bottom jeans.
Have you ever bobbed for apples?
Yes.
Do you know why people did that?
No.
Because they had that hot to and spit on it energy.
And I've never bobbed for apples, not because I don't like apples, but
I can
because I
believe it.
think it's gross that all that saliva is in the same hole. Anyway,
No, you just ruined bobbing for apples for me now.
you're welcome. The
And
game traces
don't
back.
forget the snot.
Yeah, this. Oh,
Okay,
uh,
Jesse will not be bobbing for apples anymore. Thank
unless
you.
you're the first one,
Anyways,
right?
yeah, I'll do it if I'm the first one,
Yeah,
and
but
then
then you have to worry about
I'll
dirty
do that
hands and
hot
botulism.
to it.
So
Anyways,
the game traces back to the courting rituals that were part of the Roman festival honoring Pumana. So I don't know what the purpose of it was, but I do know that young
Fun.
men and women were able to predict the future of their relations based on the game.
well, I
Yeah, whether
mean,
you both you
think
get
of
the
it
apple out
this.
together.
I don't know. I don't know anything about this. I'm hoping you guys can enlighten me.
No, I just thought it was some stupid game people made up, kind of like TPing houses and stuff.
Well, original. So bobbing with apples, we think of it now as a solo sport. Back in the day, two participants would go at it, either head to head, or if it was a couple, they would try to get out an apple together.
Mm-hmm.
And their success on doing so would determine their success in a relationship.
Okay.
So this is weird because I just looked up apple bobbing on Wikipedia, and I know Wikipedia is made by normal people and isn't always trusted. But this says that the players are usually children. Use of arms is not allowed, and the hands are often tied behind the back to prevent cheating.
Yeah, nowadays it's how it works. Adults don't bob for apples all that often, but I mean they can.
Huh. All right. So.
See, you also have to remember that Roman culture is very much, akin to our modern day culture in terms of like the mentality people had about a lot of things. And the more they discover in history, the more we realize human beings haven't really changed in several thousand years.
True.
Like in Pompeii, when they excavated the bathrooms in Pompeii, they found writing on the bathrooms, the equivalent of like Bob was here.
Or for a good time, look for or find so and so.
Yep.
They also did apples on a string, which is basically the same things.
Applesauce.
Yep. They dangle an apple
Yeah.
and then you both go at it.
The tradition of
Oh, that's
bobbing
kind of cool.
the tradition of bobbing for apples was done during an annual celebration where young unmarried people tried to bite into the apple floating in water or hanging from a string on a line. The first person to bite into the apple would be the next one to be allowed to marry.
Oh, allowed to
That is
marry.
how it is written. Yep.
Oh.
Last but not least, you've never watched Charmed, so you don't know the episode I'm talking about, but the Charmed ones go back into the past and they come upon this celebration preparation for Halloween, of course. And one of them goes up to this bin of water and somebody slices the apple peel off of it and she's told to throw it in the water and that's the initial of her true love. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
No.
Okay. I guess that's like a more of a Wiccan thing. I have no idea, but I just thought of that too with that
Oh,
apple.
Wiccans.
Oh, Wiccans.
They're the very cutesy wootsy pagan cousins.
Yep.
So that's everything I have for Halloween. What do you have, Jess? You have anything else?
Mine's just like what I said, just for the origins of it, where I like how I celebrate Halloween different than everybody else. Because for me, it's more of feeling closer to your loved ones that are gone.
Right.
And just thanking for I'm not a farmer, but I still do the offerings for the harvest of being able to go to the grocery store and buy apples, or being able to go to the coffee shop and get my basic white bitch drink when I want during the holiday. Just that kind of thing, just to kind of keep tradition alive to a point. Even though a lot of the traditions back then we don't do now, because if I lit a bonfire in the middle of my yard and danced around naked if I wanted to, I would get arrested for. So it you gotta kind of like work around things. I may not like what it's turned into, but I deal with it.
So that's going to be it for today's podcast.
Like, subscribe, follow.
We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
So, what surprised you most out of all the information that we had, Jess?
You like candy corn!